This is It's a DS Thing, where every conversation is a step closer to the heart of God. Evelyn and Janet can't wait to share these moments of Bible seeking with you. In every episode, we tackle real issues, share personal stories, and discover the beauty of God's love in the midst of it all. So, if you're ready to be inspired, encouraged, and maybe even challenged a bit, hit that subscribe button now. Join our community of faith seekers, and let's walk this journey together.
Welcome to an episode on our Unveiled series. This is a series where we invite guest speakers and together unveil all of the answers to your controversial questions. So let's dive in. It's time to unveil. Welcome back to the Unveiled series. Today's episode is called Leaving the Fold. And in today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about the experience of being a Christian your whole life and then actually leaving the church. So today we have a very special guest and we're very excited to have him on because he will be giving his testimony at the end of the episode. So get ready.
Welcome. Hi, Evelyn. Thank you for introducing that episode. And again, once we're back here at It's a DS Thing podcast, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, as Evelyn said, we have a very special guest. And at this moment, I want to introduce him, a very special person in my life, in my family. He was a member part of my church for many years now. He's far away, closer to Evelyn than he is to me. You know, we still keep in contact and we're so glad to have him here. And I'm going to let him introduce himself before I do it myself. So with Mr. Raul del Valle. So tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, what do you do?
Well, and my name is Raul del Valle. I am originally from Puerto Rico. I was raised there, born in New York City. And about when I was a year old, my parents moved down to Puerto Rico. So I grew up there until I was 17 years old. After that, I left Puerto Rico and came up to the States, went to Texas, to Southwestern. Back then it was called Union College, but it's now called Southwestern Adventist University. So I went to school there and never went back to Puerto Rico to live there. So I've been out here in the States, I don't know, maybe 40 some years or something like that, you know. That dates me. I shouldn't have said that, but anyway. Anyway, so I have a family, beautiful family. I'm married to my wife, Marlene. We have two sons. The oldest son, his name is Alex, and our youngest son is Kelvin. Kelvin went to school there to Southwestern Adventist University. And that's when we met the Diaz families. Janet, her sister, her parents went to the same church. And that's why we're now living in Tennessee. The reason why is because, it's Tennessee.
Yes, yeah. Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Oh, wow. So we're not too far away.
Yeah. You guys are closer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had lived in Tennessee for around 20 some years, 22, 23 years, and moved to Texas because our oldest son made us grandparents. So we have two beautiful granddaughters. And so Kelvin had just graduated from high school, so we all moved to Texas, and he went to SWAL. He graduated from there. Everything was going well. We were have been 10 years that we have been living there, but then Kelvin gets a calling from his old alma mater, the academy here in Madison, Tennessee. They asked him to come work there. And so he accepted after giving us some good thoughts and asking God what would be the best thing for him to do. So we packed things up and came back to Tennessee with him. A little sad because we left our oldest son, Alex, and his family, the girls and his wife, but we're trying to get him to move here now. So we'll keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully that will happen. And that's what's happened here in the past 11 months. We've been here almost a year. Marlene, my wife, is working at the conference, the Kentucky Tennessee conference. I had retired, when we moved out here. But after 3 months, my wife, and her, Janet, she goes, you know what? You need to get a job. What are you doing? Honey, I'm retired. I mean, I've worked all my life. No, you need to get a job. And I said, all right, I'll get a job. I was getting a little bored here at the house. And I do have a part-time job at the Madison Elementary School, supervising students from the academy that come after class to clean and, make sure that the school is looking good and all that. And I also have it's a full-time job that allows me to do my part-time job. How blessed can you get?
Nice.
Yeah, with it's called Clark Distributing. They are a company that delivers vegan and veggie food and meat and juices and all kinds of stuff. Nice. So I'm delivering all kinds of products from them in state and outside the state of Tennessee.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Hardworking man, right?
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I'm telling Marlene that I'll probably work until I get tired, I guess, but maybe 3-4 years, maybe 5 years more and completely retire, because that's when she retires. So we can both retire, and stay home all the time.
Nice. One day we'll get there, Evelyn. One day.
Yeah, I know. I was like, how many more years do I have to go?
Yeah. But you're also a pastor's son, right? Pastor's kid.
Yes, I'm a PK, if you know what that means, preacher's kid. That could be good and it could be not so good sometimes, People hone on you, especially church members. If you're the pastor's kid, you got to be a saint, you got to behave and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't always I wasn't a bad a child, but, sometimes you have some problems. But anyway, God is good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raul. We're going to get to know him more as the conversations for this episode go on. But yeah, we're just so thrilled and happy to have you here in this episode. But during this, usually we ask a question to our guest. It's always like a surprise question, but I know you're very good at coming up with stuff. And so we're going to
Thanks for the warning.
We're going to throw you in a curve right here. But the question is, apart from Jesus, when you get to heaven, what is a person from the Bible that you want to meet, and what do you want to ask him?
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Now you're making me think.
I got you to think.
There's so many Bible personalities or persons that you want to meet. I'm very impressed with the King Solomon. He's one of my favorite personas, if you will, from the Bible. So I want to spend some time with him and ask him some questions, pick his brain out.
How did you deal with so many wives?
Hey, that is a question. Yeah, I don't know if he will answer the question or not. But one is enough. Let me say this. He's someone that I've admired. As a matter of fact, I'm reading I read the book of Proverbs every day, and when I'm done reading it, I go back to the first chapter again, and every day. And I also do the same thing with the book of Psalms. Those two books.
Okay.
And so, King Solomon would be one person that I want to meet and pick his brain, like I said.
All right. Wow. Interesting answer. We are in this Unveiled series, and this Unveiled series is talking about very edgy, controversial, maybe sometimes uncomfortable questions. That's what we want to hear. That's why we're here for. Right. So we're going to start off with our questions, and we have them right here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to start this because I know, like, I've experienced, I've either had some friends who went through it or me being a Christian my whole life, but also like having those, you start having those doubts or those questions. And so I'm really excited to hear what Raul has to say today.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
I'm learning.
We're all learning here.
Yeah.
So the first question that we have here, it says, did you go to church because your parents took you? If not, what inspired you to go to church, or what was the motivation to attend church? So, I mean, I know, at least me and Evelyn, we grew up in the church. We never knew other than the church. Our parents took us to church.
Mhm.
Our third generation Adventist in our
Yeah.
family. I was
Mhm.
trying to think, and so we've never known otherwise, and so probably many people that are hearing us today, you're in the same spot, or you just go to church because that's what you know, and that's what your parents take you, or they say you have to go to church because this and that. So going to this question, Raul, what has been your experience? Is it that when you were younger, did you go to church just because of what your parents told you to, or what was it that moved you to attend church?
Well, I'm also like you, Janet.
Mm-hmm.
When my parents married, they were not Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
But not long after that, I was born, and I don't think they were still Seventh-day Adventists when I was born, but it wasn't long after that they became Seventh-day Adventists. So as far as I'm concerned, I've known no other religion, at least in my first 17 years or whatever. We have not belonged to any other group or religious or Christian religion except for Seventh-day Adventists. So I also consider myself to be born in, if you
Into
will,
the church.
within the church, the Seventh-day Adventist church.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no choice, Janet. I had to go to church,
Yeah.
They went to
Mm-hmm.
church, everything, and I did. And my brother, I have a brother, a younger brother. We both did go to church. Our parents took you to church, and so we grew up within the Seventh-day Adventist environment.
Okay.
Mhm.
So do you consider that you would just go to church because of your parents?
They were good at instilling that desire and
Okay. Mm-hmm.
for us to go to church. It was great, we grew up in the church. We went to a Seventh-day Adventist school also,
Okay.
ever since from kinder all the way up to high school. We graduated at the academy there in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So all my life,
Okay.
we went to school and to the Seventh-day Adventist school and to the Seventh-day Adventist church. So, as I was getting older, because I left Puerto Rico when I was 17 years old. So I was getting older. I was still practicing the Seventh-day Adventist religion, and I had no problem. We really were not forced to go to church. We just knew that it was part of our life, and we did it.
You didn't know
Right.
otherwise. You didn't know otherwise. I think for me, at the beginning, as a child, I want to say, between the ages of probably when you're born to 10, 12, I
Mm-hmm.
was, like I didn't really think about church like I did afterwards. When you hit like 12 or 13, at least for me, I started asking questions, you
Mm-hmm.
know, why this religion, why Saturday, why this? And so I'm very curious. And you know me, Ro. I ask
Right.
questions for everything. I like researching, and I'm a very curious person. And in that point, I was like, why am I going to this church? Is it for my parents, or is it because I truly believe this is the real doctrine? And in that moment is when I started doing, digging and asking
Mm-hmm.
and questioning my parents and looking in the Bible and starting research. And until I was convinced of the truth, I kept going to church. And I think that's the reason why I still today go to church. Because now as adults, it comes to a point where you take your own decisions. Nobody forces you. Nobody tells you to go. And so you go because you desire and you have a connection with God. But there's like a moment where you as an adult have to take a decision and say, do I keep doing this because I don't have to now. Like you said, you didn't have another option. Well, now you do. But do I keep going? Do I don't? And so for me, that was my experience when it comes to, nowadays, I don't live with my parents. I lived for a while in Arkansas, not with my parents, and I still went to church. And because that was something that I took that decision. And so I think we all get that option to say, there comes to a point where I say, do I keep going or do I not? But that was my experience.
Yeah, I also thought it was really interesting that Raul said that like he went to a school where everybody would go. So he went to the academy, right?
Yeah.
And so it was almost like normal to go. Like it wasn't, nobody was really forcing you to do anything because it was just so normal. You saw your friends going, so you would go.
Yeah. Yeah, I had no problems. I had good friends, I really did not start questioning things until I left home. And
Okay.
all of a sudden I'm outside the Christian environment and I'm starting to see things. But I think towards the end we can go. I'll talk more
Yeah.
about that because even though I went to a Seventh-day Adventist school and church, Seventh-day Adventist, I have no problem. Good friends, we had a good time all the time. But as I got older, I started not liking or not appreciating certain things my parents were doing. By the way, my dad did not become a pastor until he was 50 years old. So I only experienced living with them and him as a pastor for about 5 or 6 years. And then after that, I left. I left Puerto Rico, came up to the States. But there was something that always kind of bothered me because they were very, very strict. I grew up in a very, very sheltered home. And so I kid sometimes about this when I talk about it, but I say my mom should have been the pastor of the house because she was very strong and very, into it and all that, authoritarian, if you will, And I also kid about saying that she should have been paid by the conference, not my dad, because she was the one pushing everybody. But that's okay. But I started having some second thoughts, especially when I came to the United States, and we can just go into that later because I know you want me to.
Yes. He'll share that testimony later on. I want to touch two topics, and I saw Evelyn's eyes open up when you mentioned this. But we'll go into there. First, it's very interesting that Christian Adventist bubble that you were talking about, because I've experienced it myself too. When I moved to Arkansas, I experienced it. Here I live in Keene. I went to Southwestern as well. My life is the church, and you know it, Raul. Like there's nothing. Janet is the church. That's my life. And so there's this bubble that honestly you don't interact a lot with non-Christian because you're in this bubble of Adventism, right?
Sure.
But when I moved out to another state, which is Arkansas. And so you get out of that type of environment, Adventist environment. I remember, and it's hilarious. The first day of my job in Arkansas, I worked at a TV station. They were training me. And so this girl made a mistake, and she said like a super bad word, like super loud. And I was like, my ears. I was like, I was like in panic mode, like what is happening? Like I hadn't even heard like a curse word in such a long time in any conversation I had with anyone, that I was like, oh my goodness. It was like such a, like a shocking culture experience that you get when you get out of that bubble. But I'm so glad I did, because I got to interact and I got to have such amazing experience with other people that don't believe the same thing I do. So I think it's very important to get get out of that bubble, because sometimes, like you said, like we're just kept so much in it, and we don't have other perspectives. Like our perspectives don't change because we just stay in a little box.
Right.
And for me, I was like, it was a blessing for me to experience all of that, because my perspective of how we are as a church, of how we do things as a church changed. And so I think everybody has to go through something like that. eh, when you've been like in this structure of only Adventism that sometimes we get into.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
now working for the conference, even worse, like my coworkers are Adventists. So sometimes you
Mhm.
have to push yourself to get out of that comfort zone. But another point that I also wanted that you touch was strict parents
Yeah.
in an Adventist world. And that's why I know
Yep.
Evelyn wants to go there.
I'm
I
ready.
know she is ready to go. I honestly didn't experience that myself as much as other young people have, because like you said, my dad, he was born in Adventism, my grandpa
Mhm.
too, and then us, but my mom wasn't. She became
Mhm.
Catholic until she was 20 something, as an adult. And so, like you said, my mom should be the pastor of the house, because man, but it got to a point of our lives where she told us, you're already grown, and we were in adults, but we already had knowledge of good and bad. It's
Mhm.
like, if you don't want to go to church, let me know and we won't take you to church. If you want to go and experience the world and go party and do this, do that, go, you could do it. And she was very open for us to make mistakes, but to learn from those mistakes. And so she was not the strict parent that was like, you have to do this, you have to do that, like things like that. So she kept like the balance at the house. So we didn't really experience that of being, you have to do this. It's like more, learn about this and you take the decision if you want to do it or not. But
Mhm.
I know that a lot of people dealt with strict parents, and sometimes that's what brought them out of church,
That's
them,
right.
Mhm.
them in church.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, similar to what Janet was saying. I did grow up in a household where it was very traditional. I think strict and tradition go hand in hand here, and so it was just very different. But even though my parents were very strict at home and very traditional, I experienced a lot of what Janet was experiencing in Arkansas when she left Texas. So my parents are from Arkansas, and I was living in Arkansas at the time with them. So I didn't go to academy. I was public school all my life up until college. And so I definitely experienced and was out of that bubble, that Christian bubble. I experienced friends with different beliefs. I was very exposed to all that lifestyle. And it was up until I moved to college where I started experiencing the Adventist bubble, that Christian bubble. And after spending, 4 years here, I tried to go back to Arkansas for vacation to see my parents. And it was like, whoa, like my eyes opened up again. And I was like, I'm not used to this anymore. And so what Janet was saying was having that balance in there just helped so much with realizing things that it kind of opened my eyes to be like, hey,
yeah.
even though you're still in Tennessee where you have a big Adventist or Christian community, you should still reach out to those people because it can be so easy to be stuck in your ways.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I definitely I
For
can
sure.
relate to that, Raul.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the comments. And yes, I mean, let's move on for the next question because we have a long way to go. But the next question says, oh, this is a personal question that I want to see our perspective. And you could answer also, Rose, but if Evelyn and I could answer this question is, has it ever crossed your mind to leave the church?
Yes. As a matter of fact, it did, and it also happened.
Mm-hmm.
When I left home, came up to the States. I think 2 years after that, I was at Southwestern Adventist College. Right around 2 years after I had been there, I started thinking about leaving the church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just started seeing a complete different lifestyle, things that were prohibited. I started noticing by my parents and all that. I started noticing that they weren't that bad. I'm going to give you an example,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
I met some students at Southwestern Union College or Southwestern Adventist Swallow
Yeah.
that were from other countries. Had two or three good friends. Up until today, they're They're my best friends also. They were from the Dominican Republic. Okay. And they happened to go to school there by mistake. These guys were not religious, maybe Catholic, but they were well off. The Dominican Republic. His parents wanted to send him to a school up here. I think they came over to Suau by a mistake that one of them made in trying to find a school. So they were. They had no knowledge of what that school was like. Mm-hmm. And so I befriended them because first of all, I was finally out of the house, out of the confinement that I felt myself being in. Mm-hmm. Made good friends with them. And I remember one night, one of them says, "Hey, Raul, let's go to Cleburne, which is a town, 3-4 miles away from the school. Let's go eat pizza." And I said, "Yeah, sure, let's go." Yeah. So we went to Cleburne, went to a pizzeria place, and they bought a pizza with chorizo, with pork meat on it, and so they come over to me and I said, "Hey, Raul, here's your slice of this pizza." And I said, "What? No, I don't eat that stuff. Is that pork?" And I says, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. "And why don't you eat?" They asked. "Well, because it's bad." And they said, "Bad? Man, you haven't tasted anything as good as this. It's not bad. It tastes good." So they kept pushing. And I said, "All right, let me just go ahead and take a bite." I took a bite and I said, "Man, they've been lying to me all my life. This is such a good piece of pizza." And that's how things started in my transition from being a Seventh-day Adventist practicing the religious things that I had learned. Yeah. And one thing led to another until I was completely disinterested in going back to church. These guys, let me tell you something, Janet and Evelyn, these guys, in my opinion, were sometimes 10 times better than Christian friends that I had. They were honest. They were loving. They helped out people. They were good to be with, fun. Yes. And I'm like very confused at that point because when I grew up, people like that were bad, evil, sinful. They're going to hell. They're not going to heaven. And I'm like, wait a minute,
mercy.
There was a big confusion in my head. So needless to say, I just went that way, and I was that's when I got out of. I stopped going to the church at that point.
Evelyn, has that ever crossed your mind to leaving the church?
I never thought, when you say the church, I think there should be like a specification, like leaving the church or leaving God, because I think that could be two different things. And so for me, I never felt like I needed to leave God. I always felt like I needed him. But I definitely, there was a point where these traditions, and like I said, I grew up with strict parents, so these traditions became a little annoying to me. And especially like coming to college, it was like, everybody was following them, but then I realized that I was just following them because everybody would go to Vespers Friday nights. Everybody would do this. And so that's when I started asking myself, what do I really believe? And what really helped me, I went to Southern. So shout out to Southern Adventist University in Tennessee. But they had Christian beliefs classes. Yeah. So that really helped me figure out what I, and the pastor who taught and professor who taught that class was very, he never pressured me or others to believe something. It was very, you could explore the Bible with him, and he was real with these kinds of topics. So, but yeah, I can kind of really relate to Raul when he's saying like, oh yeah, like sometimes you see people and I'm like, they're doing so much better than these people here, because just because my college friends were going to an Adventist college, a Christian college, they were doing stuff that maybe was a little bit too much, or it wasn't a good thing what they were doing. But then I saw my friends from Arkansas that, they were doing great things and they were totally fine. But they weren't Adventists, they weren't Christian. So I think when you're that young too, you can get confused real quick.
Yes. I did, I that did cross my mind when I was a teenager, leaving the church, because Raul, he's been an elder from our church, and I think when he was back in Tennessee, back then he was also an elder over there, so he has experience with this, and we also talked about this, that church is not perfect, and it's full of flaws and people that are sinful, and we are too. So there's going to be problems, and there's going to
Right.
be issues,
Mm-hmm.
and some people have different mentalities. Some people are conservative, some people are liberal, some people think you should, wear a long skirt to your toes, like we said on the other episode. And so during that time, something really happened in the church I was attending, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really really intense, and it put me on the spotlight, and it wasn't handled the right way, and I was really torn because they took away something really special for me, that was leadership, not in a position, but just being a leader. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the position, but they didn't want me involved. And so that really torn me up. Like, it tied my hands to work for God, which was really painful for me. And so it was really hard, like I cried a lot. I would be stuck in my room. I wouldn't understand why things happened this way if I wasn't doing anything wrong. And so that really took me apart. And it got to a point where I said, well, maybe this is not the place for me. Maybe I shouldn't be in church. And so never doubting God, like you were saying, never leaving God, but the fact that I shouldn't be involved in an organization. And so at that point, obviously, I prayed a lot. I talked to God a lot until, for the first time, I opened an Ellen G. White book.
Wow.
And in that book, and I think I'm a fan of her books because I think in that moment, one of her books saved me and showed me what I should do, and revealed to me that I should press on. I should keep on. And I didn't leave. I stayed. And the problem was still there, but my perspective changed. And that's what kept me inside of church. Instead of leaving, I stayed. So yes, it's been something that I think all of us have, at one point or the other, maybe have thought of about leaving. And so I think it's normal, because so many things happen in our lives, in the church, and it's just become part of us. And I think the teenage years are the most difficult ones, because you're so young, you don't understand many things, and it's so easy just to leave.
Believe anything that anybody says.
Yes, also that, and if somebody comes with you, you're like, yes, you should leave, like this side is better, or you should come with me over here. And you're like, okay, why not? Let's experience that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very important point. But this is another question that I'm sure Raul has experienced himself. But, there's a famous saying, or people say this a lot in the Adventist world, maybe in the Christian world, but you don't go to church to see people. You go to church to see God. And whenever we try to tell somebody of our unconformity, or because we don't like something, we're like, oh, it's because the church this. Oh, but you don't go to see people. You go to see God. They always say that. And sometimes we don't like to hear that. I mean, it's true in its way, but I don't know. I'll say my thoughts later on. But do you think this is true? Or do relationships matter?
Absolutely, relationships matter. I don't know that we go to church. That we go to church to see God the Father in person at church. That's not, I mean, that would be awesome if it was
That
there.
would.
But I'm more of the thought that that we go to church because it definitely helps us remember what God the Father is, what He has done for us through the person of Jesus Christ, and that inspired me to commit to follow Him. So do we see him in person? No, I don't think so. But we do see him in spirit and in our lives, how he impact our lives and how we change, and we start not only seeing him spiritually, but feeling him in ourselves, in our mind. And that's what inspires us to commit to him. That's how I think about that.
Okay. Yeah, I like that part that you said. We don't see God physically, like when we go to church. But it's interesting to see that we if people allow it, we are able to see God through people and through relationships. And so when you don't see that, sometimes you wonder, is God even there? Is his spirit even there? Because not because he doesn't want to be there, but because sometimes people don't allow him to be there. And so I think, yeah, we go to church for God because it's a calling he makes us. But at the same time, relationships do matter, because at least for me, like, not talking about church, but talking about a job. If I'm in a job and I'm paid the big bucks, but the environment is toxic and you work with horrible people, I'm not going to be there.
Nope.
I'd rather be working at a minimal wage job where people treat me well, where they appreciate me, where the environment is great, even though the work is difficult. But I'd rather that than to be in a high paying job and have a toxic environment, because that's not healthy for anybody.
Yeah. And something, Janet, God is everywhere. He's just not only at church.
Yeah.
You start cultivating the thoughts of loving God and developing a relationship with him. That relationship grows if you allow it to grow. You start feeling, and this is hard to explain, and I'm sure you've gone through this. It's hard to explain that you start getting closer to God. You hear him talking to you in your mind. You ask him. Sometimes I just get on. I'm over here in one of our bedrooms in our house up in the second floor, and I look out the window and I look up to heaven and I go, "Hey God, I know you're there. How are you?" And I start talking to him. Okay. And it doesn't matter where I look, he's there. And I feel that he not only talks to me, but he listens to me, and things start happening. And when I've asked God for something, to help me, to encourage me or whatever, it doesn't take long when I feel that he's doing it, and I smile. I just look up to heaven, to the sky, and I smile. Yeah, you're doing your job, God. And to me, he's a friend. I just have him as a friend. It's a relationship it's hard to explain unless you experience it yourself. But believe me, he will let you know that he's there, and you will see him. I'm going to tell you something, and you may just laugh. This past week, I went to Georgia. I go to Georgia to make the deliveries for this company, right?
Okay.
And so I was running late, and one of our customers wanted us to get there as soon as possible. Anyway, I just prayed. I said, Lord, help me get there as soon as possible. So I'm going through the middle of Atlanta, and believe it or not, I believe it. If you don't, that's okay. I'm not going to hold it against you, whatever. I had just prayed. And all of a sudden, all the traffic lights that I was going through, guess what?
Green.
They were green.
Yes, great.
And I'm driving, and I'm smiling and looking up to the skies. And you're doing it again, God, aren't you? I prayed for you to get there on time. And you may think, oh, Raul, man, that's not serious stuff or whatever. That doesn't happen. I'm sorry. I experienced that not only in what I just told you, but in my entire life. He's there with me, and that's why I love God so much.
It's those moments that you say, that was you, God. Like,
Yeah,
Mhm.
God had
exactly.
to be you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are crazy moments. I know, like, I've heard when I was like, God, please give me a sign. All of a sudden, the radio starts playing a song, and everything, all the answers that I had or all the questions I had were answered through that song. So
Amen.
those are crazy moments, but they do
Yeah.
happen. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. And so, in a little bit, we have like a couple more questions to go. Raul is going to share his testimony at that moment when he left the church and how it happened and his experience, and then him coming back into the church and how that happened. But without revealing it completely, um, I've talked to some people that left the church and came back, and or never came back, right? And something they say is that once you're Adventist, you're always Adventist. I don't know how that true that is, but you let us know, Ro. But they say that when they left the church, yeah, they could join another church or they could just not join any other church, but Saturday is never the same for them. Yes, they could do, like work stuff or be at the house doing, like cutting the grass or I don't know. But they always know in their back of their head that Sabbath is a special day and that's never going to change. They know that it's worship day. They know it is a day where God has sanctified and made it holy. And even though they're not, like they're not at a church or a member or they're not actively being an Adventist, they always know that day is special. What was your experience when it came to Sabbath when you were away from the church?
Well, I agree with you 100%, and again, I was in the past, when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, when I was living at home, I
Mhm.
was brought up to feel very scared not to be a Seventh-day Adventist.
Oh,
Okay. The
wow.
fear of God was put in my brain. If you're
Wow.
not a Seventh-day Adventist, you're no good.
No.
You will be burning in hell. You know, all of that kind of
Wow.
stuff. So I
Wow.
didn't know any better. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
I have to be a Seventh-day Adventist. But
Mhm.
to answer your question,
Mhm.
um, because I completely renounced my SDA church membership, and
Yeah.
I consider myself a Christian as I believe in God.
Yeah.
You and you need to separate religion and God.
Mm.
There's two different things. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we will separately stand before God to be judged, not because you were an Adventist or because you were a doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
We will
Mhm.
be judged individually.
True.
Our relationship with God is more important than any religion,
Mhm.
man-made or whatever.
Mhm.
But you know what? There were times, Janet, since you
Yeah.
asked,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I was out of the church for 17 years. There were times where I would get a thought in my mind, especially on Saturday. Now, back
Mm.
then it was on Saturday. Now it's
Yeah.
uh, on the Sabbath that would get it, that I would something would come to my mind and said, it's Saturday, it's Sabbath, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh, okay, but it was gone in 5 seconds. I didn't
Mm.
care. I was committed
Uh-huh.
that I wasn't going to go back to church.
Mhm.
This is not for me. This is not true. Whatever. But it would. I think that was the Holy Spirit trying to kind of, hey, I'm here, And I kept rejecting Him for 17 years.
Wow.
It didn't happen a lot, but maybe
Mhm.
a handful of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, the prayers of your mom.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, that lady has calluses on both on her
No.
knees.
Oh
And then
man.
in Puerto Rico, they don't have, if you're in Central America, whatever houses, they don't have
Mhm.
carpets on their
Okay.
house. It's just tile or whatever.
Or cement.
Yeah, or cement or whatever. But yes, her both and my dad were praying constantly, and God answered
Mhm.
their prayers.
That's interesting that you say, like that there was like that fear that was
Yeah.
entailed to you. I think I got some of that, but not as strong as you were saying it.
Okay.
But like whenever, I don't know, Evelyn, if you experienced this, but whenever they had those evangelistic series, prophetic, and
Mm.
it made it seem like like if you don't do this, you're gonna go to hell, you're gonna
Yeah,
burn,
yeah.
and you're gonna, like I was so scared like to do anything bad because I was like, I don't want to stay here, like burn myself and then everybody's in heaven. It was like it was very intense, like the
Mhm.
graphic images and the way the
Mhm.
preachers would tell you, you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not the way that our message should be
No,
preached.
Exactly.
no.
I
Mm-mm.
mean, it's the opposite of that.
Yeah,
God
yeah,
is love. He loves you. He loves you the way you are.
yeah.
Let Him work with you, and you'll see the difference. You'll see the changes.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
for sure. We have, well, I mean, you come from a pastoral family, and you've been, after you came back to the church, you were an active member. You've had several roles in the church, but
Mhm.
why do you think people leave the church? Like, what's the real reason you think people leave the church?
Mhm.
One reason I think
Mm-hmm.
is it's the showing that some members show other members, the false and fake behavior that you notice. This person at church, he is like this, but when I see him outside the church, downtown or in the neighborhood, he's nothing like he professes to
Mm.
be in church. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, what's all this stuff? Why is this person like this? So they claim to be true Seventh-day Adventists or Christians members, but you
Mm-hmm.
see hypocrisy, you see insincerity, you see deceitfulness
Yeah.
in them, and you're a Christian, that's the first thing you said, and they feel like they're superior, more they know more than anybody else. People get disappointed, I think, by the holy behavior claims
Yeah.
of the chosen sons of daughters of God at
Yes.
church, and that don't preach, that don't practice, but they preach. you
Mm-hmm.
know I'm like, he was preaching the other day and saying, don't do this, don't do what, and now I see him doing it. So another reason I think that why some people have left the church and stopped being Christians, in our case, Seventh-day Adventists, is because it's the radical strictness in
Mm.
presentation and or the severe narrow-minded behavior exhibited by some of the church members. And I did see
Mhm.
that a lot with my parents, more so my mom.
Mm.
I love her and all that. So
Yeah.
those are some of the reasons that it's just the fake. Okay, you're one person here, but then you're a different person here. That can really,
Mhm.
if you're not planted well in the church, it can affect
Yes.
you and your
Oh,
faith.
yes.
That's
Yes.
true. It's a lot about relationships nowadays, or what you've experienced. Like Janet was saying, she had a bad experience at church, and then so she started, kind of, she was hurt, and obviously a lot of people who are hurt by the church
Right.
can leave. Hmm.
Oh yeah, and that happens quite a
Hmm.
bit,
Yeah.
in some churches. Um, it's sad that it happens.
Yeah.
You just, if I see something like that happen, I try to, if I know the person that
Hmm.
got hurt and left, well, I'm not going to go over there and say, hey, you're going to get hell if you don't come back to church. No, on the contrary. I just try to go over there and offer them, do you need anything? Hey, let's go out. I would stay in
Mm-hmm.
touch with them. I would
Hmm.
show them what being a true Christian is, and I'll do my
Hmm.
best. I'm not there to criticize you, tell you that you're doing anything wrong or whatever. I'm there. No, I just want you to know that I love you. And if you need anything, let us know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's going to be people who hurt you inevitably anywhere.
that's true.
But showing
Yes.
you just, what I always tell myself is focusing on you, like you being the Christian, you being Christ-like. And even though, like you were saying, people, if you see people get hurt, go in and be their friend and show them that you have Christ in your life as well.
That's right.
What I've seen like a pattern, and I've seen that the people in church that act or portray themselves the holiest or the holier are the ones that are the worst on the other side.
Hypocritical.
Understand.
Yeah, yeah, and it's
Mhm.
like why is it that way? I think it's better to be humble and say, like, I'm not perfect. I struggle with this, and I have this addiction, or I struggle with doing this.
Mhm.
Than portraying yourself and saying, well, I do this.
Mhm.
What is it in the Bible
Yeah.
that the Pharisees would say, like, well, at least I'm not like one of them. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
one of the prayers is like, sometimes we fall into the same mistake and
Mhm.
saying, like, well, I'm not as bad as him or as her.
Mhm.
And
Completely.
and I think that affects the church a lot. Another thing that I think for young people, it really draws them out of the church. And I've seen this in several families, including
Mhm.
mine. But I've spoken to them, and together we've things have changed. Thank to God that He has helped us out. But
Yeah.
it's very easy to, as parents, to talk bad about other people in the church
Mhm.
with your kids, and that is very hurtful. And then we wonder, why do they leave the church?
Mhm.
Because you've been feeding them out of negativity. Oh, this brother, he does this, or he did that. I caught him doing this, and he's
Mhm.
preaching. And did you know about this? And
Mhm.
and that's not what church is about. And like, you have to be very careful when your kids are small, whenever what they hear, because it's not only you. Like, they also hear, they also know these people. They also see these people as role models,
Mhm.
seeing the pastor up from preaching, it's a role model for someone, or seeing an elder, or a brother you appreciate, a mentor, and then coming home and seeing your parents talk bad about them. How do you think that takes on a child? you know when when you're a kid, you see a pastor like, oh, it's a pastor, like the greatest thing, he's the leader of our church. And then when you realize, you're like, oh, okay, then he's not a good person. Like, what?
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just rumors. It's sometimes you don't know about things, or somebody told you that. So I think that is, I've seen a big pattern of young people leaving the church because of those things that we say at home.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
Our churches are full of sinners.
Yeah.
yes,
You and I. My next
all of
door
us,
person sit right next to me, behind me, and in front of me.
all of us.
Not perfect,
Uh,
and so who are we to say I'm
mhm,
better than that person? Blah 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 blah.
mhm.
That's not a Christian-like behavior. On
No.
the contrary, become, if you're not a friend of that person, try to become a friend. If you
Yeah.
see that that person is doing some things that they're not supposed to be doing because God doesn't approve, and become a friend and talk to that person. Establish a relationship with those people, uh,
Mhm.
and so help them when they need the help. But don't be gossiping or talking bad, or
Mhm.
especially if you have children at the house. That's not a good example.
No, no. And
Mhm.
I think we need to focus more on that, because we're sadly, we are used to tearing down people
Yeah.
instead of
Mhm.
uplifting them. And
Hmm.
I think it's something that we need to start practicing, and not waiting for the other one to do it. Like, it starts with us. We need
Mhm.
to take that step, and saying,
Yeah.
instead of saying, oh, you're doing this wrong, oh, you don't know how to do this, or look how he's doing this, and judging. Why
Yeah.
don't say, how can I support this person? How can I lead them, give an advice? How could I, be involved some way or another? And I think, that's something that we need to start enforcing
Right.
and doing
Mhm.
different
Yeah.
than tearing people down.
I was gonna say, plus, like you were talking about not being, some people were being like just hypocritical and putting themselves like as the highest, like, oh, I'm very, very like Christian, or I read my Bible every day, and you know, later on you find something out.
Yeah.
And so I think it's better just to be real and to be open,
Yes.
because some
Mhm.
people
For
that,
sure.
how do I say this? Our weaknesses often attract other people that have
That's
the same
true.
weaknesses. And so you're being real
That's
and you're
Hmm.
true.
showing that Christians also are struggling with some of the same things. And so
Mhm.
it's better to just And again, by being open, you don't have to share your whole life story, right? But
Right.
but you still being vulnerable takes a
Mhm.
lot of courage, and it brings
Yes, it
people in,
does.
and it shows us that
Mhm.
church isn't perfect. That it, like you were saying, is a place full of sinners who need Jesus.
Yeah, that's true. And I know, Janet, I think on your email to me, you were asking
Mhm.
how do we avoid people leaving the church, And I
Mhm.
think this is what we've been talking about right now,
Mhm.
Yeah.
But we need to establish true, authentic, reliable relationships with our brothers and
Mhm.
sisters at church. When we befriend them, we need to be convincing when we're befriending someone. You're not
Mm.
just saying hi because it's nice to say hi or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, and at the same time, you and I know that the best thing we can do is pray for them and pray
Uh-huh.
for us,
Yes.
pray for those who are balancing themselves, on a tightrope, trying to stay, trying to be good Christians, and encourage them to continue to love God,
Mhm.
and not leaving the church. We need to show them that we care.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
need to show that we care and give them extreme doses of loving treatment always. You know me, I'm always hugging everybody.
Yeah.
Um, my wife sometimes look at me, what are you doing? Well, I'm
Mhm.
hugging my brothers and sisters. She likes to give me a hard time. But uh, staying in touch with those people, not pesting them, but staying in touch
Mhm.
once in a while. And you can see that helps to keep people at church and take care of those problems.
Yeah. Letting them know that we care, that they matter. That
Yes,
they matter.
yes.
It's very important. I just want to close up this section with one thing that I don't know if Raul knows, but I want to say it in this platform. So, like I said, Raul he and his family were part of our church for a very long time. And so, one time, one of our young people had been, away from church for quite a while,
Mhm.
and he came back, very sneaky. He didn't want to be noticed. He didn't want anybody to see him, so he would always sit in the back row. This young person, and some people greeted him, and there were times he was having a spiritual battle. So there were times he would just stay in the parking lot in his car and didn't have the courage to go into church. But one day he had the courage to go to church. And some people said hi to him, some people didn't. But in one of those times that he would go on and go off church, um, Raul reached out to him and talked to him and told him how happy he was that he was here, and was really, had a really good conversation with him.
Wow.
And after a while he kept on going to church, and this is a friend of mine. So
Mhm.
we talked about this after he came to church more on a daily basis than
Praise the
on and
Lord.
off. And so he told me, Janet, the times that I would on and off come to church, there's a lot of people that came to me and talked to me, but I would notice they were not genuine. They were
Mhm.
just doing it because they had to do it, because they told them to do it because, I was struggling.
Mhm.
But there was one person that I could tell that he was genuine, that he cared,
Praise
that
the Lord.
he didn't do it because he had to, but
Mhm.
because it came from his heart. And that was Raul.
Oh
That
my
was him.
goodness.
That was him.
Wonderful.
Wow.
And for me, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's Raul. That's exactly who
Yeah.
he is. Like I
Mhm.
do believe you. And for me, I think we have a lot to learn from, because young people will know when you're faking.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. They
Young
notice.
young people will know when they're faking. They will know when you're not being real.
Mhm.
And so I think it's very important, yes, to care for people, but also if you don't feel it, if you're not going to do it out of being like wholeheartedly, don't do it, because it's going to be worse than
Yes.
if just do it because you care, because you see this person like a son or a daughter. It's very important to do that, because they will know about it. You can't trick them like
Yeah.
this young person. Mm-hmm.
You know, you're making me think a little bit here, Janet. Thanks for that.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
For
Mm-hmm.
those words. But maybe what I went through when I left the church, God had a purpose with it, you know, because I'll tell you what, I made some good friends, true, real good friends. They didn't go to church. They were not Christian. They had a knowledge of God, if who they were, but they were even better people than those that I had met in church. And those people are still friends of mine. But I think that I had to go through something like this so that I could then, God, knowing the future and everything, he knew I was going to come back to him. Now I could understand what being out in the outside of the church. And now when I meet someone that's gone through that or has been treated badly or whatever, I can then relate to him and help him with some words and some friendship and some convincing friendship that I can have with him and help him stay at the church. So I appreciate that comment. That helps me a lot.
Thank you. And you're welcome. You're welcome. I have to say this. I just have to. We have come to that point of our podcast. We're going to get into a break. And after this break, we will talk a little bit more about Raul's testimony. He's going to share with us his experience about leaving the church, about coming back to the church. But we'll be back after the break.
And we're back, ready to hear Raul's testimony about leaving the church. I'm personally very excited to hear this story because as we kind of talked about it already, we as young people can have doubts, and maybe you're at a time in life where you also have doubts, or you're questioning, why am I really at the church? Why am I following this religion, or why do I have these certain beliefs? And Raul kind of went through the same thing. So Raul, why don't you share your testimony or your story with us?
I sure will. And thank you for the opportunity to do this. I'm always willing to share something like this because I know it could help someone that could be going through the same experience that I went to. So I'll tell you what, if you don't believe that God allows a U-turn on our life's road, let me tell you that that's exactly what happened to me. I had nowhere to, when I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist home. My parents were Seventh-day Adventists, of course. My dad was a pastor. And I went all the way from kinder to 12th grade, high school, graduated from high school in a Seventh-day Adventist church, school rather. But there was something that I was missing. I decided to leave Puerto Rico and come up to the States to go to school, to go to college. But I came, when I left the house, I was just looking forward to do that. And I think, I think that a little bit of that feeling had to do with the way I was raised. Don't do this, don't do that, because, and I would ask, well, why is that bad? Because I say so, or that's basically the type of, or because God doesn't like that, and you're violating a law, and to me that was kind of well, okay, so what can I do to make you feel better, in terms of my parents, but. Mm-hmm. When I came to the United States 2 years after that, I went to college, like I said before, and I made some friends, good friends. They were not Seventh-day Adventists. I started sharing with them and experiencing with them the things that I did not do when I was in church. I started partying, drinking, going out to clubs. I completely did a 180 degrees change, I grew up as a as a pastor's son, and I know my parents loved the church, and most of their time was spent there. And as a pastor's son, I felt that I had to have expectations to live up to. There was a certain way that I had to talk and behave. But inside of me, I was seething. I wanted none of that. Religion went cold for me. It seemed rigid, and I wanted out. And after high school, I got my wish. I came to the United States, as I just said. And I've already said this to you. I mean, I met some nice people that I had never met before, and that confused me because, wait a minute, these are supposed to be the bad guys, and they're the best guys that I've ever met in my life, including my, living in Puerto Rico. So how can God judge these people so harshly, Well, and as I said, that was it for me. I became an atheist. And for the next 18, I became an atheist, an agnostic, you name it.
Other way.
And for the next 18 years, I did not see the inside of a church and barely talked to my parents. Okay. Like I said, I was drinking, using drugs, selling drugs. I racked up a lot of massive debts, money was just coming in and going out. And, I remember I was living with some friends of mine, some roommates that I had, college kids. Guess what happened? The day that I was supposed to have moved out, that night, cops raided our apartment.
Oh my.
Okay.
Wow.
And so at that point, when I saw that, of course, there were two of my roommates were from the Dominican Republic. They had visitors from the Dominican Republic and also Venezuela. Beautiful people. I'm telling you, there's beautiful, loving people. They were all taken to jail. Okay.
Wow.
I got a call at work that next day from one of them, and when they told me what had happened, I almost dropped dead on the floor. As a matter of fact, I had a friend right next to me and said, "Raul, what's going on with you?" And I go, "Why? What's the matter? What do you mean? You're pale. It's like you lost your color." And I said, "Well, I got a little problem that I have to resolve now." So I had to leave work that day. And anyway, to make that part of the story short, they were judged and kicked out. They were deported from the United States for trafficking on drugs. Okay. I should have been there that night, but I was not.
Wow.
Okay. So,
and I'm sorry, they didn't tell on you, or they didn't say?
No, of course not. No, of course not. They did not. I mean, these are real good friends. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a good friend.
Right. So that shook my world a little bit. So I'm like, okay, so how do you say it? I dodged that bullet, now, did that make me do anything about my life? No, not really. I just, I said, well, I got lucky. So,
luck.
But every now and then I would think about that stuff. What I did then, I met a friend, met this guy from college, from a university there in I was living in Jacksonville, Florida. And, him and I started, developing a relationship. This guy, real nice guy. And he said, "Hey, Raul, I want to start out a business. Would you like to be my partner?" And I said, "Sure. What are you doing?" "Well, I'm a painter. I'm a contractor. I hang wallpaper and I need some help." And I said, "All right, I'll try that." So for 8 years, we had our own business, and it was doing so great. I mean, the construction was booming there in Jacksonville. And about 8 years after that, I started going down. I started spending a lot of money, wasting money, My rent, I was 3 months late on my rent, my apartment. It was a good thing that the landlord lady there, she was a good friend, and she says, Raul, it's 3 months now. I don't know that I can hold you, keep you here any longer. And I said, okay, I'll do something about it. And I felt like the world was just crumbling under me. So what I did, this is strange. So I get, it's one, I think it was in the morning. I get out of my bed. I get up and I decide to get on my knees. Okay. I decided to go on my knees. And I started praying, which I hadn't done in 17, 18 years. And look how, I don't know how to say it, how crazy I am, but this is how I started my prayer. I said, hey, God, if you exist, look how, how bad I started it. If you exist, I'm in trouble right now. I'm just having, I'm being kicked out of my apartment. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to look. I don't have anybody that I can get help from right now. But if you exist and you get me out of this hole, I will consider coming back. I will consider coming back to your ways. I am so lucky that God did not send a lightning and struck me, with it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, Raul, here you go. Who do you think you're talking to? And so that's how I finished.
The audacity.
Yeah, the audacity of talking to God that way, right? The next day, my landlord lady comes in. She knocks at the door. She goes, hey, Raul, I know you're going through some hardships right now. I can give you a couple more months to get your life straightened and get a job. And I said, oh, okay. All right. And so I'm looking, and then I'm saying, what's going on here? I know I prayed yesterday. So now my landlady is allowing me to stay another couple of months if I don't have the money, whatever. And then I get a call from a friend from school in Puerto Rico. She lives in Orlando. She still does. And she goes, hey, Raul, I want you to meet this girl, a friend of mine. I want you to meet her. I think she would make a great couple with you. She started telling me all this about her. And I said, I said, oh, really? But where is she? I was thinking she was in Florida somewhere. She goes, she lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And I go, what?
Oh, wow.
So why?
That's a lot.
He's in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm here in Florida. Yeah. I'm not interested. And no. Look, I'm going to ask you to come down to Orlando. My brother lived in Orlando, and she said, and so you can meet her. I said, okay, that's fine. You can do that. So 2 weeks later, she called me. Hey, Marlene, my wife now, is coming down. She's going to spend a couple of weeks with me. Would you come down? I said, sure, I did. So I did, and I met my wife to be. It was love at first sight. Aww. Okay, what I'm saying. More so on her side. No, I'm kidding. It was like both of us we were like met. We needed to meet each other. You know what I'm saying? We were meant to meet each other. She was a 7-day Adventist, and it still is.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm not a 7-day Adventist. She is. Why is my friend trying to get me hooked with her?
Was your friend also a Seventh-day Adventist, or she wasn't?
Yes, she went to school with me in Puerto Rico. She was Seventh-day Adventist, going to church and all that. And I'm like,
she had a plan.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was interested. So I told Marlene and said, look, I'm willing to come out here and see you every weekend. It's only a 2 hours trip or whatever. I can stay with my brother Friday through Sunday and then go back to Jacksonville, and she goes, okay. Wow. So the next 2 weekends, because she was only supposed to be there for 2 weeks. That's what I did. And I had no problem going with her to church. I mean, I've been to church. I knew all the I knew the routine and all that kind of stuff. I had no problem doing that. So that weekend got to meet her. We talked a lot. The next weekend, I was there. We went to church, and then she went up to Nashville and I went up to Jacksonville. I didn't think anything was going to happen after that. Okay. So, I get a call from Marlene. Hey, Raul, how are you through the week? And I go, I'm doing fine. And she goes, well, do you think we can see each other again? I said, well, yeah, I hope so. I don't know that I have any plans to go up to Nashville to see you. And she goes, well, I'm going to come down to Orlando again in 2 weeks. And I said, oh, cool. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, what's God doing here? So she came down. To make this shorter, because I get so excited about it, she got to Orlando. Mm-hmm. She decided to move down. She didn't tell me she was moving down to Orlando.
Whoa. Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow. She left her job in Nashville. She then started living with our mutual friend that got us together. When I went down that next weekend, she tells me, hey, by the way, I moved down here. And I go, what? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, she's going too fast. What is this? What does she think she's doing? And I'm that's how bad I was. Okay. Wow. But at the same time, I felt like I had a little bit of feelings for her. I liked her. And I said, okay, well, that's great. And she said, and she got a job at the Seventh-day Adventist Hospital, Advent Health in Orlando. Yeah. So every weekend I started going to Orlando for 1.5 years. I did that. About 10 months or 11 months after I had met her, things were happening to me. I was praying, and I decided that I wanted to come back to God's way at that point. Wow. Because I saw that the relationship between me and her was growing. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. I could not marry her. No, I knew better, but my relationship with God started kicking in also, and I started feeling and seeing things. Well, I decided to rebaptize or baptize again about a year after that. We're now talking about, you need to, if we're going to get married, Raul, I cannot marry you as much as I love you because you're not a church. And, and I said, hey, that's taken care of. I'm going back God's way. I will go ahead and baptize myself. I called my parents, and my mom and my parents had for that many years suffered so much. She was 8 years younger than my dad. She looked like she was 10 years older than my dad. At this point, because of so much suffering about, from having a son that left the church, blah, 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 blah. Oh. So when I told them that I was getting rebaptized, they just could not believe it. And I said, Dad, I want you to come up to Orlando and I want you to baptize me.
Oh, I love that.
And he said, the weekend that this was going to happen, because the church that we were going, the pastor there wanted to baptize me. I said, well, no, that's fine. I'd like to have my dad. My dad said, look, that weekend I cannot go. And I said, okay, that's fine. I want you to come up here in about a month or so, and I want you to marry me. Okay. Wow. So you're not baptizing me, but you're going to marry me then. And he goes, we'll do that. So, I'm just going quick and fast here. And so, I got baptized. The funny thing about this is that I have some real good friends in Nashville that I knew I was going to leave them because we were going to get married in Nashville and live in Nashville. Okay. And so when I told my friends, and this is a real neat, tight group of friends, not non-Adventists. And I told them, hey, I'm getting married. And they said, great, Raul, that's awesome, And they said, it was like 4 couples, and they said, we want to go to the wedding. I said, really? You want to go to Nashville? Yes, we want to go to the wedding. Okay. So, we went out that week and went out to eat. And this is another thing. Went out to eat. one of my, we're at the restaurant, we're sitting down by the table, and one of my friends orders beers for everybody, and his wife goes, "Hey, why are you ordering beer for Raul? He doesn't drink anymore."
Mhm.
Like,
Wow.
I'm sorry, Raul, I didn't mean to do that,
Mhm.
But this is how God was utilizing me as an example,
Mhm.
as a witness. You know
Amen.
what I'm saying? And so
Mhm.
they went to my wedding. They drove to Nashville. We met there. We got
Wow.
married, and the rest is history.
Yep.
We
Wow.
started going to church, and so I am so glad God did not give up on me. He did
Amen.
not. He
Wow.
put up with me for 18 years. He knew that I was going to come back to him. And I have shared this testimony with a lot of people at churches when preaching and all that kind of stuff, hoping that someone that's there listening can get something out of it, can think about coming back to God, because God is good and I love God so much. And here we are. That's we're
Praise
completely
God.
given to him, and whatever he wants us to do, we will do.
The
Wow.
patience he has with us, huh? It's
Unbelievable.
just, yeah, the
Yeah.
patience to just wait. Because how many years you said was it 17?
18 years.
18 years. Wow.
Yeah.
A
That was
lifetime.
my parents, of course, were the happiest person in the world. They
Mhm.
passed away about 7, 8 years ago. No, 8 or 9 years ago.
Mm.
But they went to death in peace. They were so
Yeah.
happy that his son
Amazing.
had come back to church. And my brother still goes to church, my younger
Mhm.
brother. He wasn't as crazy as me. But but this is something that I cherish in my heart. I'm always trying to help people that are going through the same, because I went through that. And God is good. He is awesome. I love God so much.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's very inspirational too for people that have doubts and that have questions. It's okay. And we said this before. It's okay to ask questions.
Oh yeah.
In fact, we encourage people to ask questions and
Yes.
figure out why they believe what they believe. And that can be done, in a safe space.
Yes.
With a mentor or someone that you trust and someone that's going to be authentic with you. And I think, in a way, like for me, I had to learn from experience too. And my testimony is a whole other thing too, but I think that I can relate to some of the things that you were saying, Raul. And like, you just kind of want to try it out for yourself. And the way God was holding out his hand for us during the whole time, whether it was a month or 2 months or a year or 18 years,
Yes.
his hand was always there and just protecting you and guiding you and just having the patience to, to wait for you. He's waiting for you like the prodigal son.
I know. I
Amazing.
I could have been killed during those
Anything
years.
could have happened to you.
I would do runs down to Miami to get drugs and bring them back to Jacksonville. I was dealing
Wow.
with
Mm.
drug dealers down there, back and forth. Anything could have happened to me, but God took care of me, and I am so thankful that He protected me at all times.
Mhm. Yeah,
Amen.
you're never too far gone.
No,
Yes.
you're never too far gone. Thank you for sharing. I had heard the story, but the part of how you and Martin met,
Yeah.
it was like I had not heard that part, and I was like,
That's through a mutual friend. I went to school with
that's
her.
crazy.
And so God had some good plans for
Yes.
me and Marlene, and so I'll always be thankful to him for all this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And the fact that you actually heard his voice and responded to his voice, because things could have also gone or would have been very different if you hadn't chosen to obey and listen to God's voice.
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
that's
That's true.
powerful. That's powerful. Thank you so much again, for just being here, sharing your thoughts, and it, just hearing this story, as I know you, in a personal level, it makes sense the way you are, like man, this guy, he just, I mean, the way it was very intense, the way he left church and what he went
Mhm.
through, but it's also, like I guess when you go through an experience like that, it makes you realize, what you have, and you're like, I don't want to lose that again. So you come back with more power, intensity, and having a Bible study with this guy is, he knows his Bible, he knows, our beliefs, and it's just every time I talk to him, it's like, every time we're at church, and he probably doesn't know this, but it's like, oh, if Raul was here, he would help us out in this dilemma. He would know what to do in this case, and we always miss him so much. But just knowing his background lets you know why he's the way he is, and it's powerful for me to see that aspect of him. So yes, we just want to tell you guys to keep on joining us in this Unveiled series, because we have had so many good speakers, and I think all of them have been guided by God. He has brought us, he brings them to us. Praise because the other day we were talking, me and Evelyn, and we're like, I can't believe we recorded so many episodes. How did we get so many guests from where? Like, but it has been all God. Because the people we bring, they have brought so many good insights, so many good things to the table, and we're just so thankful to God for bringing this series to us, and we still have more to come. So please keep on joining us. Remind us of our platforms, Evelyn.
Spotify, but if you don't have subscription with both of those, you can always go to YouTube. So a lot of our stuff, even though it is audio, some things are audio, some things are video, but they will always be on YouTube as well. So yeah, just keep tuning with us and joining us. And we're just really glad again to have Raul here for today. And I know I've learned so much, and I hope that you guys have also learned a lot.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciated what you've done, asking me to do this. I'm more than happy and always able or available to share my testimony with anyone. Pray for me, pray for my family. I'll pray for you too. And Janet, we love you. We love your family. Now that I've met Evelyn, right?
Yes, Evelyn.
We will pray for you as well, and this minister that you have through the waves, keep it going. If you need anything, if you ever come up here to Nashville, let us know. And I know you, Ellen, you're in Chattanooga, right?
Yeah, right so only 2 hours away.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if we go to Chattanooga, try to go to a church over there, we'll give you a call. Maybe we can meet there or something. And we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much for the time spent here with me.
Yes. And thank you for the time. I know we're all busy. Thank you, Evelyn, because I know you have a busy schedule too. And yes, so join us for the next episode that's coming up.